Let me guess. You buy a beautiful container planting every spring. You set it up on your porch or patio, you water it for a few weeks, and then life happens. Work gets busy, you go on vacation, a heat wave rolls in, or you simply forget. And by August, you're staring at a pot full of dead sticks, wondering what went wrong. You blame yourself. You think you're bad at gardening. But here is the truth. The problem was never you. The problem was the plants. Most ornamental perennials sold at American garden centers are bred and selected for one thing: to look spectacular on a nursery shelf under controlled conditions. Consistent water, ideal temperatures, attentive staff checking on them daily. They are not designed for a container on your deck in July when the temperature hits 97 degrees and nobody watered for 9 days because you were in Florida. Real container gardening, in the real world, means heat waves you didn't plan for. It means storms that dump 3 inches of rain in an afternoon and then dry, baking weather for the next 2 weeks. It means vacations and work trips and weekends where the garden simply doesn't get touched. Most perennials cannot handle that swing from one extreme to the other. They fail not because you're a bad gardener, but because they were never built for real conditions. The 6 perennials I'm covering today are different. These are plants I have personally grown in containers through droughts that lasted weeks, through heat events that pushed triple digits, through storms, through extended stretches of zero attention, and through winters that tested everything. Every single one came back the following spring. Every single one kept performing year after year without needing to be replaced. These are not greenhouse plants dressed up as tough ones. These are genuinely, biologically hardwired for stress, because they evolved in environments where stress was the baseline, not the exception. By the time you finish this video, you will know exactly which plants to buy, how to set them up in containers for maximum survival, and the one single mistake that can kill even the toughest plants on this entire list. Stay with me through plant number 6. That one is the bonus plant I added specifically because of how many gardeners I've spoken to who were shocked it wasn't on every container gardening list already. Let's get into it. The first plant is Sedum, also called Stonecrop. And if I could only recommend one container perennial to a gardener who wanted to set it up and genuinely never worry about it again, this would be it. Sedum is a succulent perennial that grows across USDA hardiness zones 3 through 9, covering virtually the entire continental United States. Upright varieties like Autumn Joy, Matrona, and Maestro form substantial clumps, 18 to 24 inches tall, with thick, fleshy blue-green leaves that would look at home in a high-end container arrangement. In late summer, they produce wide, flat clusters of pink and rose flowers that age gradually to deep bronze by fall and persist through winter as architectural dried seed heads. It earns its place in a container through all 4 seasons without being replaced once. The reason Sedum survives conditions that kill other perennials comes down to one biological fact. Those thick, fleshy leaves are water storage tanks. When rain stops and temperatures climb and the soil in your container starts to dry out, Sedum is drawing on reserves it built up during better conditions. The plant has been doing this through droughts for millions of years of evolution. It doesn't panic, it doesn't wilt, it simply uses what it stored and keeps going. In a heat wave where other perennials in your container garden are wilting by noon, Sedum will look exactly the same at 5 p.m. as it did at 7 a.m. Temperatures exceeding 100 degrees do not faze it. Full sun all day does not faze it. In fact, Sedum actively performs better in hot, dry conditions than in cool, moist ones, which is the opposite of most ornamental perennials you'll find at a nursery. The same succulent structure that handles drought also makes Sedum surprisingly resilient to heavy rain and temporary waterlogging, as long as your container has drainage holes. Excess water drains away. The roots, which are adapted to soil that swings between dry and saturated, simply adjust. The plant does not rot the way moisture-sensitive perennials do when their roots sit in wet soil for an extended period. Container management is as simple as any plant gets. Use a pot at least 12 inches in diameter with drainage holes. Fill it with a fast-draining potting mix. A cactus blend or standard potting mix with extra perlite added works perfectly. Place it in the sunniest spot on your property. Water occasionally when you happen to think of it. That is genuinely the entire maintenance program for most of the year. Container growing tips. Container size, 12 plus inches diameter, multiple drainage holes, non-negotiable. Soil, cactus mix or standard potting mix with added perlite, no moisture retaining mixes. Sun, full sun, minimum 6 hours daily. More is always better. Water, only when you remember. Letting it go weeks between waterings is fine. Fertilizer, once in spring if you want to. Skip it entirely and it still performs. Annual maintenance, cut old growth to the ground in early spring before new shoots emerge. That's the entire yearly task list. Watch out. The single way to kill sedum is to keep the roots consistently wet in a container without drainage. Overwatering in a non-draining pot will rot the roots within weeks. Also, sedum in shade becomes leggy, weak, and falls open at the center. It needs sun to hold its form. Give it light and lean conditions, and it will outlast every other plant on your porch. Sedum is your foundation plant. If you put only one plant from this list into a container this season, make it this one. Now, let's talk about a plant that makes sedum look needy by comparison. The second plant is Russian sage, Perovskia atriplicifolia, and it is one of those plants that seems almost too good to be true until you've grown it and seen it perform through a genuinely brutal summer. Russian sage is a woody perennial that grows across USDA zones 4 through 9. It produces tall, airy stems of silvery gray foliage, topped with fine spires of lavender blue flowers that bloom from midsummer continuously through fall, often 4 to 5 months of uninterrupted color, without a single deadheading, without fertilizer, and without consistent watering. The visual effect is soft and hazy, like a plant photographed through gauze, and it catches the light beautifully in afternoon sun. But what matters for this video is where it comes from, and why that changes everything about how it performs. Russian sage evolved on the steppes of Central Asia, the vast, semi-arid grasslands of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and surrounding regions, where summers are brutally hot and dry, winters are genuinely freezing, and the soil is lean, rocky, and largely devoid of the nutrients most garden plants demand. This plant did not develop in a meadow with reliable rainfall and rich soil. It developed where conditions were extreme, resources were scarce, and only the most efficient survivors made it to the following season. That genetic programming carries directly into your container. When temperatures exceed 100 degrees and other perennials are struggling or shutting down, Russian sage is in peak bloom. The silvery coating on its leaves is not just decorative. It reflects sunlight and dramatically reduces water loss through the leaf surface, a direct biological adaptation to heat and drought. The root system, even when confined to a container, develops surprising depth and access to whatever moisture exists in the lower layers of the potting mix. Here is something that surprises most gardeners. Russian sage performs worse when you take care of it too much. Regular fertilizing produces lush, floppy growth that requires staking and is more susceptible to disease. Frequent watering creates the same problem. This plant genuinely wants lean soil, infrequent water, and to be left alone. The more you ignore it, the more compact and structurally sound it becomes. It is one of the very few plants where deliberate neglect is the correct horticultural approach. Container growing tips. Container size, 14-16 inches diameter minimum. Russian sage develops a substantial root system that needs room. Soil, lean, fast-draining potting mix. No moisture-retaining amendments. Lean is better than rich here. Sun, full sun, all day if possible. This plant does not tolerate shade. Water, let soil dry completely between waterings. During established growth, once a week or less is fine. Fertilizer, skip it entirely. Fertilizer causes weak, floppy growth and reduces flowering. Annual maintenance, cut the entire plant back to 6 to 8 inches above soil level in early spring before new growth emerges. Do not cut into old wood. Cut just above where you can see green growth starting. Warning, watch out. Russian sage must have full sun and must have drainage. In shade or in consistently wet soil, it becomes sparse, weak, and susceptible to root rot. Also, the woody base is normal as the plant ages. Do not try to cut into old woody growth when pruning, as it won't regenerate from bare wood the way herbaceous perennials do. Russian sage is the plant you give to the gardener who has killed everything else. Next up, the one plant that has a saying built around how impossible it is to kill. The third plant has a saying attached to it among American gardeners. If you can kill a daylily, you might need to give up gardening entirely. That sounds like an exaggeration. It isn't. Daylilies, Hemerocallis, are hardy across USDA zones 3 through 9. They produce strappy, arching foliage and trumpet-shaped flowers in virtually every color except true blue. Deep reds, vivid oranges, soft yellows, pinks, purples, near whites, and complex bicolors with contrasting throats. Reblooming varieties like Stella Yarrow and Happy Returns flower multiple times from late spring through fall, staying compact enough at under 24 inches to work beautifully in containers without overwhelming the planting. I want to take a moment to explain why daylilies are so exceptionally hard to kill, because it comes down to their root system, and that root system is unlike anything else on this list. Daylilies develop thick, fleshy, tuberous roots that store both water and nutrients in a way that allows the plant to survive conditions that would kill perennials with finer root structures. During a drought, the plant draws on those stored reserves. During a heat wave, those reserves buffer the stress. During a period of heavy rain and waterlogging, the roots tolerate temporary saturation in a way that most perennials cannot. The plant has evolved a biological savings account that it deposits into during good conditions and withdraws from when conditions are difficult. The result is a perennial that blooms reliably, no matter what summer throws at it. Forget to water for 2 weeks? The daylily will be blooming when you come back. Travel for a month in July? Come home to flowers. Experience a week of 95-degree heat with no rain? The daylily keeps going. Individual daylily flowers last only 1 day. That is literally the origin of the name. But an established container daylily produces dozens, sometimes hundreds of buds over the course of a season, so the display is continuous and changing, rather than a single static moment. That daily turnover also means the plant always looks fresh, rather than holding on to old, tired blooms that need to be removed. For container growing specifically, compact and reblooming varieties are the right choice. Stella d'Oro, Happy Returns, Rosy Returns, and Pardon Me are all under 24 inches, proven rebloomers, widely available at American garden centers from spring through early summer, and perform as well in a 14-inch container as they do in the ground.
Container growing tips. Container size, 14 to 16 inches diameter. Daylilies develop a robust root system and appreciate the space.
Soil? Any quality potting mix. Daylilies are not picky about soil. Standard potting mix from any garden center works fine. Sun? Full sun to part shade. They tolerate both, though full sun produces more flowers. Water? Water when you remember. They prefer consistent moisture, but survive long dry stretches without issue. Fertilizer? Monthly during the growing season improves flowering, but skip it and they still perform adequately. Division? Every 3 to 4 years when the plant becomes root-bound, divide in early spring. This rejuvenates flowering and gives you multiple plants from one. Warning. Daylilies are heavy feeders compared to the other plants on this list and will deplete container potting mix nutrients more quickly. For best flowering, either fertilize regularly or refresh the potting soil annually in spring. Also, and this is critically important for households with cats, daylilies are highly toxic to cats. Even small amounts of ingestion, including pollen, can cause acute kidney failure in cats. If you have outdoor cats or indoor cats with porch access, choose a different plant from this list. Daylilies are foolproof with one non-negotiable exception, and if you have cats, that exception matters. Now onto a plant that the more you ignore it, the better it actually performs. Plant number 4 is one that I believe is genuinely underused in American container gardens, and every time I recommend it to someone who hasn't grown it before, the reaction after their first season is always the same. Why didn't I try this sooner? This is Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, a native North American perennial that grows across USDA zones 3 through 9 and has been thriving on dry prairies, rocky meadows, and disturbed ground across this continent for thousands of years without any human assistance whatsoever. Yarrow produces ferny, finely divided, aromatic foliage in gray-green that looks elegant and textural in a container even before the plant blooms. The flowers come in flat-topped clusters, called corymbs, in shades of yellow, gold, deep red, salmon pink, soft pink, and white, depending on the variety. Modern cultivars like Sassy Summer Series, Millie Rock, and Strawberry Seduction have brought better container proportions, more intense colors, and longer bloom seasons to a plant that was already extremely tough before breeders got involved. Yarrow blooms for months from early summer through fall, and it attracts an impressive diversity of pollinators. Native bees, butterflies, predatory wasps, and beneficial insects pursue yarrow flowers with remarkable consistency. The reason yarrow is so exceptionally tough comes from where it evolved. This is a plant of open, sun-blasted, frequently dry prairies and hillsides where competition for water is intense, soil nutrition is often poor, and conditions swing dramatically from season to season. Yarrow responded to that pressure by becoming extraordinarily efficient. The finely divided foliage is a direct adaptation to reduce surface area and therefore reduce water loss through the leaf. The roots grow deep and access moisture that shallower-rooted plants cannot reach, and the entire plant goes semi-dormant during extreme heat events, slowing its metabolism and conserving resources, then resumes full active growth and flowering when temperatures moderate. This adaptation is something most gardeners never see because it happens gradually and the plant still looks presentable throughout. Other perennials wilt, brown at the edges, and look distressed during heat. Yarrow simply quiets down, holds its position, and waits. Then the heat breaks, and it comes right back. Here is the other thing that makes yarrow unusual compared to everything else on this list. It is one of the few plants that gets worse when you give it more care. Rich soil produces weak, floppy growth that falls over and requires staking. Frequent fertilizer does the same thing. Regular watering beyond what the plant needs creates the same floppy, unsupported stems. The perfect conditions for yarrow in a container are conditions most gardeners would consider neglectful. Lean soil, minimal water, no fertilizer, full sun. Treat it like a pampered plant, and it will disappoint you. Treat it like a tough survivor, and it will exceed every expectation.
Container growing tips. Container size, 12 to 14 inches diameter with excellent drainage. Soil, lean, fast-draining potting mix. Do not add moisture-retaining amendments. No rich or heavily fertilized mix. Sun, full sun all day. More sun means more compact growth and more flowers. Water, sparingly, only during genuinely extreme drought. Let the soil dry between waterings every time. Fertilizer, skip it entirely. Yarrow performs better without fertilizer than with it. Deadheading, cut spent flower clusters back to basal foliage when they fade. This encourages continuous reblooming and prevents excessive self-seeding. Warning, watch out. Yarrow self-seeds aggressively. If you don't want seedlings appearing in neighboring containers, deadhead consistently before seeds develop. Also, yarrow sap causes skin irritation in some people, particularly those with sensitive skin. Wear gloves when handling or cutting it back. And again, more care is not better here. Overwatering and overfertilizing cause more problems with yarrow than any amount of neglect. Yarrow is the plant that secretly runs on neglect. The next one fills the late summer gap, when almost every other container is starting to wind down, and it just keeps going.
The fifth plant is one that most American gardeners have seen, and many have grown in the ground, but far fewer have given a real chance in containers. That is a missed opportunity, because black-eyed Susans in containers are one of the most reliably cheerful, most consistently performing, most low-maintenance choices you can make for a full-sun container garden. Black-eyed Susans, Rudbeckia fulgida and its cultivars, are native North American perennials that grow across USDA zones 3 through 9. The flowers are unmistakable, bright, warm, golden yellow petals surrounding a dark, raised central cone, produced on upright stems that reach 18 to 24 inches in container-appropriate varieties. They bloom prolifically from midsummer through fall, often September and October, filling the exact period when many other perennials have already finished their season and containers start looking tired. This late-season performance is one of the most practical qualities a container plant can have. What most people do not realize about black-eyed Susans is just how extreme the conditions they evolved to handle actually are. These are prairie plants. The North American prairie is one of the most environmentally demanding biomes on the continent. Scorching summers regularly exceeding 95 degrees, periodic multi-week droughts, violent thunderstorm seasons with sudden flooding, and winter temperatures that plunge well below zero. Black-eyed Susans did not just survive those conditions on the prairie, they thrived under them. They spread across millions of acres under conditions that eliminated most of their competition. That evolutionary toughness translates directly into a container on your porch. During the hottest part of summer, when temperatures climb into the 90s and other container plants are flagging, black-eyed Susans are entering their peak bloom period. Heat activates them rather than slowing them down. They are genuinely one of the few perennials that blooms more prolifically, not less, as summer temperatures peak. Modern varieties have made container performance even better. Goldsturm is the classic, staying compact and blooming heavily from July through October. Little Gold Star stays under 20 inches, ideal for container proportions, and produces an exceptional density of flowers. American Gold Rush is one of the newer introductions, with improved mildew resistance and a more refined form for container work. All three are widely available at American garden centers in spring and early summer. Container growing tips. Container size, 12 to 14 inches diameter. Well-draining potting mix. Soil, standard quality potting mix. Black-eyed Susans are not soil picky. They evolved in lean prairie soil and adapt to container conditions easily. Sun, full sun for best flowering, though they tolerate part shade without failing. More sun equals more flowers. Water, occasionally when you remember. Established plants handle extended dry periods without distress. Fertilizer, light monthly feeding improves flower count, but skip it and they'll still bloom. They don't need to be pushed. Deadheading? Not required with modern varieties, but removing spent blooms prevents excessive self-seeding into neighboring containers. Warning. Black-eyed Susans self-seed prolifically in containers and adjacent pots, significantly more than they do in the ground, where seedlings face more competition. If you want to control spreading, deadhead before seeds fully develop. They can also develop powdery mildew late in the season in humid conditions with poor air circulation, though this almost never affects flowering and typically appears after the main bloom season is already winding down. Choose mildew-resistant varieties like American Gold Rush if this is a concern in your region. Black-eyed Susans carry your container garden through August and September, when other plants are winding down. And now, the bonus plant. The one I added specifically because it doesn't appear on enough container lists and deserves. The sixth plant is the one I added specifically for this video, because every time I talk to container gardeners about tough perennials, this one almost never comes up first, and it should. This is Echinacea, coneflower, specifically Echinacea purpurea and its modern cultivars. It grows across USDA zones 3 through 9. The flowers are large and distinctive, a raised, spiky central cone surrounded by swept-back petals in deep rosy purple, soft pink, warm orange, rich red, creamy white, or sunset yellow, depending on the variety. They bloom from early summer through fall, and the seed heads that form after flowering provide a secondary display through winter, while feeding goldfinches and other seed-eating birds right at eye level on your porch or patio. Echinacea is one of the most important native perennials in North America from a pollinator standpoint. Native bumblebees, honeybees, specialized coneflower bees, and a remarkable diversity of butterflies, including monarchs, swallowtails, and fritillaries, rely on coneflower pollen and nectar with a regularity that few other plants match. If building a container garden that actively supports pollinators is part of your goal, no plant on this list delivers that more visibly or more consistently than Echinacea. But the reason it belongs on a list of indestructible container perennials is not its pollinator value. It is its deep taproot. Echinacea develops a substantial taproot that drives downward into the potting mix with genuine force. In the ground, this taproot can reach several feet deep. In a container, it reaches as far as the pot allows,
And what that root is doing is accessing moisture and holding the plant stable during conditions that would topple or stress shallower-rooted perennials. During drought, that taproot is reaching the bottom layers of your potting mix, where moisture persists long after the surface has dried out. During a heat wave, the plant's connection to those deeper reserves is what keeps it in active growth when other perennials shut down. Echinacea also has a specific quality that makes it unusual among the plants on this list. It actually improves after the first season. The first year in a new container, Echinacea is establishing that taproot and may produce fewer flowers than you expect. By year 2 and year 3, the same plant in the same container will produce significantly more blooms, hold its form better, and handle stress with even more resilience. It is a plant that rewards patience and repays every year you give it. Modern compact varieties have made container growing significantly easier than it was even 10 years ago. Magnus stays around 36 inches, the classic and one of the best pollinators. Sombrero series tops out at 18 to 24 inches with exceptional flower density and a long bloom period. Pow Wow Wildberry is one of the most container-appropriate varieties available, staying compact with an extraordinary density of rosy pink blooms from June through September. Container growing tips. Container size, 14 to 16 inches diameter minimum. The taproot needs depth. Go taller rather than wider when choosing a container for Echinacea. Soil, standard quality potting mix with good drainage. Not too rich. Lean conditions keep growth compact. Sun, full sun to light afternoon shade. Tolerates part shade better than most plants on this list. Water, moderately drought tolerant once established. Water during the first season while the taproot develops, then reduce frequency in subsequent years. Fertilizer, light application in spring. Skip heavy feeding, it produces floppy growth. Deadheading, optional. Leaving seed heads standing benefits birds and provides winter interest. Cut the entire plant back in late winter or early spring before new growth emerges. Warning, watch out. Echinacea's first-year performance can be underwhelming. If you plant it in spring and see modest flowering that first summer, do not give up on it. The plant is investing energy in root development. Year 2 will look dramatically different. Also, Echinacea does not divide well and resents root disturbance once established. Plant it and leave it in the same container for multiple seasons rather than moving or dividing it frequently. Before I close, 5 mistakes I see repeatedly that kill even genuinely tough perennials in containers. Avoid these and you will succeed with every plant on this list. Number 1, containers without drainage holes. This is the single most common mistake in container gardening, and it is fatal to every plant on this list without exception. No matter how drought-tolerant a perennial is, roots sitting in standing water with nowhere to drain will rot. Every container needs multiple drainage holes and must not sit in a saucer of standing water after rain. Number 2, using garden soil instead of potting mix. Garden soil compacts in containers, forms a dense mass that restricts root growth and drains poorly, creating the waterlogged conditions that kill even tough plants. Always use potting mix specifically formulated for container growing. It stays loose, drains freely, and provides the air pockets roots need to thrive. Number 3, placing plants in shade when they need sun. All 6 plants on this list need at least 6 hours of direct sun daily. In shade, every one of them becomes weak, leggy, produces fewer flowers, and becomes more susceptible to the diseases and problems that sun and air circulation naturally prevent. Put them in your sunniest location and they will perform. Put them in shade and they will struggle, regardless of how indestructible they are by nature. Number 4, over-fertilizing. This surprises most gardeners, but for 5 of the 6 plants on this list, everything except the Daylily, excess fertilizer causes more problems than it solves. Rich soil and heavy feeding produce lush, soft, floppy growth that falls over, attracts aphids, and looks worse rather than better. Use lean conditions and minimal fertilizer, especially with Russian sage and yarrow. Less is genuinely more. Number 5, crowding multiple plants into undersized containers.
Every plant on this list needs room for its roots to develop fully. A container that is too small restricts root growth, limits water and nutrient access, and produces a weaker plant that handles stress less effectively. When in doubt, go up a pot size. Larger containers also buffer temperature and moisture swings more effectively. The additional soil volume acts as insulation and a water reserve that benefits the plant through every extreme the season throws at it. Avoid these 5 mistakes and you will have success with every plant on this list, even as a first-time container gardener. These are not difficult plants. They simply have a few non-negotiable requirements, sun and drainage chief among them. And meeting those requirements is what unlocks everything else they have to offer. There you have it. 6 perennials that are genuinely, biologically equipped to handle the conditions of a real garden in the real world. Not a greenhouse with a dedicated irrigation system and a staff member checking temperatures twice a day. Sedum for the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it performer. Russian sage for the gardener who wants months of lavender color and would rather neglect than pamper. Daylilies for foolproof summer blooms in every color. Yarrow for the native that thrives on the leanest, most neglected conditions you can provide. Black-eyed Susans for reliable late summer color when everything else is winding down. And Coneflower for the bonus plant that rewards patience, feeds pollinators better than almost anything else, and improves every single year you give it. Now here is my question for everyone watching, and I genuinely want to hear this. Which of these 6 are you planting first? And what is the specific condition in your garden situation that made you choose it? Are you a frequent traveler who forgets to water? Are you in a climate with brutal heat? Do you have a spot that gets sun all day and everything you've tried has fried? Drop your situation in the comments. I read every single one, and your answer might be exactly what someone else watching needed to hear to make their choice. If this video helped you, if it changed even one decision about what goes in your containers this season, share it with one other gardener. That is all. One share, 10 seconds. Container gardening has a reputation for being difficult and expensive precisely because most people start with the wrong plants. Help someone in your circle start with the right ones. Subscribe if you aren't already, and turn on the notification bell. Every video on this channel is built around specific, honest, experience-backed information for gardeners who want results in real-world conditions. The next video is already in production, and you will not want to miss it.